Hello there, you're watching Youth Focus on Direct 24 and I'm Henriquet Mugabo in Nairobi. I want to welcome all our viewers in Nairobi and around the world. This program aims at bringing youths together to discuss on different issues in business, sports, politics and social life. But first, here are today's headlines. Nearly 200 countries have signed the COP24 rulebook to fight against the climate change on this Saturday, 16th December. The fuel tax protest has turned violent in Paris after the Gilets jaunes protesters engaged with the French police. Police used tear gas and water cannon to disperse the crowd. US President Donald Trump is trying to deport Vietnamese refugees that arrived before the 1995. Rapid climate change has forced countries around the world to take action to reduce emissions that are harming the world's environment and the future. 196 countries have signed the COP24 UN Climate Change Convention taking place in Katowice, Poland, that will seek to put the 2015 Paris Agreement into practice. The agreement sets out the global action plan to put the world on track to avoid dangerous climate change by measuring, reporting, and reducing the emissions. The youth around the world are taking part in this fight to bring a positive change with a vision to create a better future, free from high temperatures, and to protect the environment. US President Donald Trump withdrew from signing the agreement with the reason that he doesn't believe it, a reason that many saw as ignorance and selfishness. African countries are the most affected by the change in climate as the world is rapidly warming up, causing weakening in agriculture, health, increase in environmental disasters, and more. Kenya has faced heavy rains and floods recently that were caused mostly by the change in temperatures around the world. I want to open this discussion on this topic: how important and what can we do as African youth to maintain and fight against the climate change? Please share your views on our social media on Twitter at mhenriquet_24 or direct24 and send your SMS on 07 70 30 55 15. Today's topic of discussion is how important and what can we do as African youth to maintain and fight against the climate change. And the first opinion is by Gerard King, and he says, Africans are struggling with poverty, and on top, the changing climate is killing the less that we have. We need change. Please continue sharing your opinions on our social media at mhenriquet_24 and direct24 and through SMS on 07 70 30 55 15. Now Sophie, our correspondent, will take us through today's feature story.
More and more African girls are getting access to education, but that wasn't the case until recently. The traditional values in Africa allows boys and men to have access to education while girls and women are to stay home preparing for those who went out. This has always been the case until girls rose up to fight for their right to education, and with the help from different organization bodies around the world and men that respected that right. The vision for girl child education has been achieved in many African countries. Some countries in Africa still have that belief that girls don't have a right to education, but with the help from people around the world, there are trainings and initiatives that aim at educating those with such beliefs. Girl child and women empowerment has been of great importance in Africa as more and more countries are ruling out any kind of women discrimination, and they are promoting gender equality.
Thank you, Sophie. Before we move over, could you please share your opinion on this initiative?
Henrik, thank you very much. Without such initiatives, we wouldn't have women that like Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chimamanda. Women are trying to break the glass ceiling from every sector, be it literature, be it politics, be it career, be it business, be it technology. This is because of these initiatives, and without these initiatives, the women would still be told to be in the kitchen, to shut up and listen when men talk. But these initiatives help us so that we can see it is not just women who are in the city who are empowered. We need to empower women in the rural areas, in the countrysides, because they too need the empowerment. And empowerment here is not about competing with the man, but it is about knowing yourself as a woman, knowing what you can do, knowing what you're capable, and having a seat on the table. It is far from what people think that it is competition, because I seem to agree that if a woman is trying to compete with a man, that is lack of ambition. But if a woman is soaring high to greater heights beyond anything else, well, that is the epitome of women empowerment. I am Sophie Opondo. Back to you, Henrique.
Thank you again, Sophie Opondo, for reporting on that important issue. We'll be back with a deep discussion on today's topic. How important and what can we do as the African youth to maintain and fight against climate change is today's question of discussion. And we have received a number of opinions. Michael Fundi through SMS says, what future are we preparing for our children if we can't take care of today's environment? Continue sending us your opinions on our social media at mhenrik_24, at direct24, and through SMS on 07 70 30 55 15. This topic of discussion is how important and what can we do as African youth to maintain and fight against the climate change. And I want to welcome our opinion leaders to help us elaborate more on this topic. Before I start this conversation, I want to play for you a speech by a young lady called Greta, a speech that she gave in the COP24 convention that took place this December.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done, rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity.
After watching this clip, I want to ask you, how important is it for us to keep our climate clean, especially for Africans?
It's very important to keep our environment clean because this is where we get our resources for our daily needs, for food, to get energy. And for some of us, it's how we make a living through farming. And if we pollute our environment, all these things will be tampered with and lives could be lost even at the edge, not only livelihoods. I think we should all make it a priority to keep our environment clean for the next generation so that they can use it and we can give them a safe place to live and thrive.
Thank you. Recently, Kenyans faced heavy rains that caused floods in different parts of the country. As a Kenyan youth, what would you do and what would you want the government to do to change this situation?
Well, I would like the government to conduct civic education whereby they sensitize the community on measures to take in taking care of the environment. And recently, especially in major cities like Nairobi, we've had drainage problems. And what I would request personally, what I request the government is to do proper planning and build drainages that will help manage such situations whereby water flows well to where it is supposed to, and there is proper management of the drainage systems that have been established, and that includes the clogging drainages that have been clogged and constant maintenance from relevant authorities.
Thank you. You took part in different initiatives since you were young that promoted protecting the climate. What would you advise other youths on doing to promote such a cause?
Well, thank you. The youths could start by empowering themselves with knowledge. Information is power, and the sooner we are able to learn about climate change, the sooner we are able to solve the dire effects that Africa is suffering from. Thank you.
Thank you to our opinion leaders. I want to remind you the questions of today and the topic of discussion of today. How important and what can we do as the African youth to maintain and fight against the climate change? How important and what can we do as the African youth to maintain and fight against climate change? This is today's topic of discussion, and we have received a number of opinions on our social media. John Doe says, after watching that young lady talking about the future, I hope it has opened eyes for many of us to fight for the change. I want to play that touching video again before we move on for a short break.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done, rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity.
Our future lies in our hands, and we need to fight for the change not only in Africa but all over the world. Governments should come together to find other ways of generating energy without releasing emissions that lead to global warming. Not everyone feels the same or knows about the climate change, and it's our duty as the youth and future leaders to educate those around us, to promote works that will help us in the future. This was all we had for you today. Let's continue our conversation on our social media at mhenrique_24 and direct24. I want to thank all our viewers around the world and opinion leaders that helped us in this discussion. I'm Henriquet Mugabo. Stay tuned to more interesting programs on Direct24. Take care.